Hey guys, it's Elena. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you my super spooky and funky dress that I made. I have been dying to make a super fun Halloween dress and I have finally done it. So I'm going to walk you through how I did everything so you can make your own. So this is the cute fabric I got. I got 1.5 yards of the pumpkin fabric, 1 yard of the white fabric, and then 3/4 of a yard for the polka dot. However, I did end up getting another 1/2 yard of the polka dot so that I could have enough fabric for a tie and some binding for the bottom of the skirt. So once I got my fabric and I washed it all, I cut everything. So I will link this sleeve pattern below. It's a link that I found previously for a puffy sleeve. And then I am just cutting out my bodice pieces and my skirt pieces. And so I have my bodice front, my bodice back, my big giant sleeve, and then 2 skirt pieces. I also ended up cutting later on binding for the neckline and the skirt and a tie. Once I have everything cut out, I am putting the bodice together and sewing along the shoulder seams and side seams of my front bodice pieces and my back bodice piece right sides together. Once I put it together, I decided that I wanted to add a little dart on the side. So I put that on and then just kind of pinched in one side, and then I am measuring where that is and how much I took in so that I could duplicate that same dart on the other side of my bodice. So that's what it looks like all pinned together. And then I'm just going to sew that dart in. So you'll start with your normal seam allowance at the very widest part of that dart. And then once you get about halfway down, you are going to shorten your stitch length a little bit and basically just sew until you're off of your fabric. And then you'll leave some little strings and tie those strings into a knot so that that thread does not come undone from your dart. And this will help give you a really nice, clean, crisp dart. After that, I am serging all of my bodice pieces. I've decided to serge all of the raw edges of this dress, so I don't show every single time that I serge, but just know that I am using my serger to take care of all my raw edges. After the bodice is mostly done, I am putting on my sleeve. So I am doing a long basting stitch along the top shoulder of my sleeve pieces so that I can gather those so that we get a nice little puff. So I've done my long basting stitch and then I'm holding my top thread and then just kind of pushing that fabric along. And then I am putting my sleeve, folding it in half, right sides together, and sewing along the side seam of my sleeve. And then I am ready to attach my sleeve to my bodice. So I'm basically putting it right sides together and lining up the side seam of my bodice with the side seam of my sleeve. And then I'm just kind of like shimmying around and adjusting the gather to make sure that it's the right size and that all my gather is about at the top of my shoulder. And then I'm just pinning all the way around so that I can attach it and nothing is catching and it's all gonna sit nice and straight. So you'll just use your normal seam allowance. I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance to attach my sleeve onto my bodice. Here is that finished little puff at the top. So cute. I love how this fabric is playing together. And then now I'm hemming my sleeve. So I'm just doing a double folded hem, folding up about 3/4 of an inch twice. So I'm folding it up 3/4 of an inch and then folding it up again. And then I'm just using clips and then sewing very close to the edge of that seam and sewing all the way around the bottom of my sleeve so that it is nice and hemmed and looks very nice from the outside and the inside. Once that is complete, I'm going to make this extra puffy by adding some elastic to it. So I have cut some elastic the width of my bicep, and then I'm just overlapping the ends by about a 1/2 inch, and then I'm using a zigzag stitch to basically attach that together. And I'm going to do that in several places just so that it is nice and secure and it's not going anywhere when I end up stretching this to sew it on to my sleeve. So I'm going to put that bottom part where we just stitched and line it up with the bottom of my sleeve and pin it there. And then I'm basically just going to stretch my elastic as much as it can and pull it so that I am doing a nice and straight zigzag and attaching this elastic onto my sleeve about 1 inch away from the start of my hem. And that's going to give me a super nice cute little ruffle at the bottom of my puff sleeve. Next, I am starting to work on my button strip on the front of my bodice. So I have allowed for 1 inch to fold in. So I just finished that raw edge, folded in 1 inch along the front of my bodice to make my little strip where I'm going to put my buttons, and then I'm just attaching that. Once that is complete, I have marked and putting on all of my buttonholes. I have decided to do my buttonholes sideways because I've been having problems with my buttons coming undone. So this will really help so that my buttons do not come undone. And then once I've done all of my buttonholes, I'm just going to attach the 2 front pieces of my bodice together at the very bottom. So I'm just basically like overlapping those button strips a little bit and attaching that so it's one nice round circle so that I can go to attach my skirt a little bit easier. So next, I am making some binding to put on along my neckline. I was just gonna do normal facing, but my husband was like, binding would be cute. And I was like, you're right. So I'm basically just taking a strip of fabric that's about 3 inches, folding it in half, and then folding in those raw edges to that folded center line, so that when you fold it all together, you have a nice folded edge on the bottom and then folded edges along the top. So you're going to unfold this newly made bias tape, and you're going to basically line up the raw edge of the bias tape to the raw edge of the top of your neckline, and you're going to sew in that folded divot that you created earlier. So you see that little fold there. I'm just using my hands and making sure that the raw edges are lined up and then stitching inside of that little ditch that I created. Once that's complete, I am just going to fold in and create this nice little angle. This is the V-neck, the front of the V-neck of my neckline. And then I'm just gonna fold down the other edge of my bias tape to complete that little bias tape and make it look nice and finished on the front and on the back. You can see that straight edge of the button strip is just going straight up, and then I am taking off my clips and doing my straight stitch along just to secure that. Then I'm using my buttonhole stitch on my sewing machine and putting on all my 6 buttons. They look so cute. I love the contrast. And then I am starting to put my skirt together. This is a really simple skirt, so I'm putting my 2 rectangle pieces together, right sides together, and then sewing down along the side seams of the front and the back skirt pieces to make one big skirt piece. Once that is secured, I am sewing a long basting stitch along the top of my skirt so that I can gather this. And it's just, man, it's gonna turn out so cute. If you want more details on gathering, I have a video on that on my channel. Once you are done with those basting stitches, I like to put 2 on. You can just hold those top 2 strings and then pull on your fabric and gather this to be the same length as the bottom of your bodice. And then I've clipped my bodice onto the skirt right sides together, and then you're gonna attach that right sides together. Make sure that nothing is catching underneath or puckering or overlapping. That can tend to happen when you are working with gathers. So just go really slow and take your time and you'll get it to look perfect. After that, I have decided to add the same type of binding to the bottom of my skirt to finish that raw edge, just like I did with my neckline. So I created just another set of binding like I did exactly before and attaching it the same exact way as I did. And then I decided to also create a little tie. So I just cut out a piece of fabric and made one long strip of fabric about 70 inches long. And then I am folding it in half and sewing it right sides together, leaving a little hole to make a nice little finished belt with little angled ends. And so I've left this little hole, and then I'm going to put it right sides out and close up that hole, and then your tie is done, your dress is done, and then now you can be the little Halloween queen that you are. I hope you love this video, and I'll see you in the next one.